Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Salam Media News and Views with Fazlin France Talib. It has just gone 9:25 and we have a very interesting segment coming up, Decoding the Voter's Psyche, Unveiling Hidden Truths and Surprising Perspectives. And joining us to unpack this, remember, we're a day after our 30 years of democracy, elections, national and provincial elections. So joining us to unpack this, we have Carlo Antha, who is an ex-detective in the Western Cape and crime investigator. Good morning, Carlo, and welcome to Salam Media.
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
No problem. Carlo, so just obviously yesterday was historic. We saw historic numbers in terms of in certain areas, not necessarily all across the country, but we definitely saw historic numbers pitching up. What are some of the challenges I think that came about in this process, just with the sheer amount of people that were you're turning up at voting stations?
I think one of the biggest problems was let me first address the IEC. The spoil votes. What happened is that there was a lot of votes that doesn't have stamps on, so that means doesn't get accepted as a vote, and that is a problem from the IEC side. And this is something that they definitely have to work on because how many people vote and there's no stamp on. It's totally unprofessional, and this is things that people have to look at because some parties lost some votes in terms of that.
That is a really interesting insight because very often when people talk about spoiled ballots, we tend to think, somebody themselves, the voter, made a mistake. But obviously, when a ballot isn't stamped, that's a fault line on the side of the IEC. Have they indicated any way in which they're gonna, correct that? Because yeah, I mean, if the spoiled ballots add up, a lot of people might be asking different questions on whether this is man-made error or something more sinister.
Yeah, that is correct. Uh, we believe or we hope they're going to take it up because it's something bad. Because, I mean, if you think that a person comes to vote, or quite a few people come to vote, they leave their work early, they waste their time by standing in the queue, they're staying there for long hours, and then afterwards, also, if you think of fuel, they have to put in fuel to get to the voting station. So they are losing out, and their vote at the end of the day means absolutely nothing. So I just hope that the IEC is going to take it up because it is a huge problem.
And what are some of the other challenges, Carlo, that emerged on the day? I mean, we like to talk about the good feeling. We felt good because we voted. There's historic elections, etc. But what are some of the other challenges? Because I think these things are important for us to know when we question. When the results come out and anybody disputes whether or not this has been a free and fair election, we need to be able to go back to these particular moments to say, what are some of the incidences that bring that into question?
Okay, there was a lot of people who was complaining. They will go to a voting station. They're supposed to vote there, but their names is not there. Then they will find out they were registered at another place, but they doesn't stay in that area. So then the people must go there, and it was quite a problem all over. I think Africa. I saw on WhatsApp messages, media, where people complain about they have registered in a certain area, and then when they get there, then their name is not on the list and then they must go to another voting station. And this is also one of the big problems that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I experienced that myself as well. I obviously moved areas, and I had to travel all the way to an area where I used to live in, where I was voting. So I do think, and while we were there were a number of people that faced that same challenge. And obviously, that is something new with this election, with the addition of the regional ballot, and so obviously that is a new aspect that has been brought in. But I also want to ask about, sort of other, challenges that might have emerged with regards to the long queues. I mean, I know at my particular voting station, so this was a very interesting scenario. In the VD or in the ward that we voted, historically, I think there were more voting stations. One of them in that particular area had been closed And so everybody had to go to this one, voting station. And I'm realizing as I'm speaking to more people that that is actually more of a common sentiment. And obviously it speaks to, well, if historically there was two VDs in a particular area, now there's only one, it makes sense that the lines would literally go past 9 o'clock. Do you think that perhaps is also an oversight by the IEC, just in terms of actually factoring in these numbers?
Yes, they obviously have to address it, as you are saying. Even worse, there were some families, husband and wife, they doesn't vote at the same voting station, but they have the same address. So that is a problem, and there's a problem the IEC side that they have to address, because this is what makes it difficult for the people. But what stands out for me, as you mentioned about the amount of people weren't complaining. 2024 was like 1994, where people want to make a change. People didn't care to stand in long queues to make a change. They were standing there, they were fine, they were speaking, they were joyous. People were just speaking because I think they had a thing about we need to make a change. Remember in 1994, people voted because they wanted apartheid out. So there was excitement that we're going to get apartheid out. Everybody voted for the ANC. I would say the biggest percentage voted for the ANC to get apartheid out. The same thing happened here now. People came in numbers because people are not happy with the ANC. They came in numbers because they want to vote them out. And the one thing that stands out is that between 1994 and now, what stand out? They wanted to vote out that time the MP. This time they wanted to vote out the ANC. People came in numbers to vote out the ANC because they are sick and tired of the ANC. People that doesn't even believe in the DA voted for the DA because they believe they must come up in numbers because the DA is the second biggest party, come up in numbers to vote out the ANC. So not even DA members voted for the DA. It was other parties, smaller parties, that vote. And even ANC members, they voted to get the ANC out of power. That was the ultimate goal to do that as we were doing it in 1994. I spoke to quite a few people, and this is what they were saying. Let us just get the ANC out of the way. Then we can go back to our parties and do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about, Carlo, any sort of other incidences. We saw there was in some areas, questions with regards to ballot papers. I saw there was a video trending on TikTok, ballot papers that boxes that were thrown out, not ballot papers, but boxes that were thrown out that already had the seal and the writing and all of those things on. Obviously, we know this is as you just said, this is a historic election. And if we look at the African continent as an example, very often when liberation movements are faced with the challenge of, them retaining power, the big question marks come into place with regards to the IEC. Now, I'm asking the question based on what we've seen on the video clips that are going around. I'm not saying, like, my immediate question is this true? Is it not? How do we verify this? And what is the system of complaints even for somebody to raise these issues? If, for example, there was some sort of tampering or anything of the sort. And the reason why I ask this question is very often when a party does well, whether it is the ANC or opposition parties, when they don't do well, then the question comes back to, was it the election free and fair? We saw that happen in the United States, one of the oldest democracies in the world. And so I think it's important for us to kind of address that now, because when those questions comes in after the elections, then we at least know that we have to some extent interrogated some of the information in the public domain.
Yeah, that's correct what you are saying. And as you say, I also saw the videos that went around about the boxes they were found and so on. And that is actually a question that need to be investigated. Now the IEC must investigate it. Now the question is, are they going to investigate it or are they not going to investigate it? Because we want a fair election. And that's always the question, but you will also pick up, there's a trend whenever there's an election, you will see videos like that. And sometimes you will ask yourself, is it all videos they are busy with? They just send out to confuse the people. So that is the question. Every election, there's always videos like that, and you will never find it afterwards and say that, oh, the boxes were found. This is what happened. That's what happened. So I don't know how the IEC responded it. I don't know if the IEC, they have an investigation team that goes out immediately and go investigate it. So there will always be a question: was this a fair election? Wasn't it really votes that was destroyed? It will always be the question. And we would expect, as the people, we expect the IEC, the bigger body, to investigate it, because we want that election that we say it was a fair and a free election. But it will always be the question until the IEC can answer and say what can they or what will they do about it.
Mm, mm. So just last insights from you, Carlo, in terms of your projections. You spoke quite vehemently about some of the sentiments that people had when they went to the voting station. We've seen some early numbers obviously come in on the IEC dashboard. And it at the moment, obviously, it's there's nothing conclusive. The big metros are still outstanding, and that's usually where the big sway takes place. So it's very difficult, I think, for us to really project quite soundly. But just from the sentiment, and to build on the sentiment that you spoke about earlier, but the sentiment of the voters that you've engaged in, where do you think we will be after a day or so once all the results are in?
I think, as I said, the voters have an ultimate goal. They want the ANC out. I think it's going to be difficult. It's going to be the DA and the ANC again as the two opposition parties, the strongest parties. But I think at the end of the day, now, as you look at the results currently, the ANC is running ahead and then followed by the DA. So I think with the whole until Sunday, until all the votes have been counted, it will be between the ANC and the DA. The other party, I don't think the EFF will come. It will come close, but not that strongly. But it's between the two of their parties. So we must just vote and watch and see what's happening. The only thing I hope is that the people came out with hope. When 1994 there was the expectation. With every expectation, you can also expect disappointments, and there was lots and lots of disappointments. Then afterwards, a lot of people then changed their mind and voted for the DA. And again, there was disappointments. And the expectations wasn't reached. The people were still struggling. And then the smaller parties came. They started something because they can see there's a need for the people. People need service delivery. Because we're sitting with a situation where people get into parliament, become ward councillors, they receive a salary, and forget about the people who put them in power. So we will now watch and see what happened. Whoever gonna win, I hope they're gonna pull up the socks. I hope they're gonna make sense. I hope they're gonna see the outcry of the people, because the people in South Africa need service delivery, and that's why the parliament, that's why the people are there. They must stand up for the people who vote for them.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Carlo. That was Carlo Antha helping us decode the voter's psyche. Obviously, we know yesterday was a historic elections. Now, 30 years after democracy election, there was unprecedented numbers in some areas. Queues waiting, people waiting 6 hours, to get to a queue. There were people still in the queue at 11 o'clock last night, trying to exercise their democratic right to have a voice in the future of the running of South Africa. So we had, Carlo Antha that, that unpacked that with us. So we're going to go to an ad break. And after the ad break, we're going to delve into the numbers. What do the numbers say right now? Thank you so much for joining us, Carlo, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thank you. Pleasure. Okay.